oxygen, carbon dioxide, gas exchange, breathing! What do all these things have in common, you ask? Well, they're all related to the respiratory system, and today I'm going to teach you all that you need to know. So the respiratory system has three main functions. Number 1, supplying oxygen to the blood. Number 2, removing carbon dioxide from the blood. Number 3, regulating blood pH. So this is the acid-base balance. So we need to know how we bring air in and out of our body. So inhalation is basically bringing air into your body. So this begins when the intercostal muscle and the diaphragm contract. This action expands the rib cage and allows the floor of the chest cavity to move downwards. As the air pressure decreases, the walls of the lungs are drawn outwards into the chest cavity and the lungs expand. This expansion causes the air pressure in the lungs to be lower than the air pressure outside the body. Exhalation is basically bringing that air that was inside of your body out. So this begins when the diaphragm and intercostal muscles relax, thus reducing the volume of the chest cavity. As a result, the volume of the lungs decreases and the air pressure inside the lungs increases, and the air moves from the lungs to the lower pressure environment outside the body. Through this demo, the plastic at the bottom of the bottle represents the diaphragm, and the balloons represent the lungs. As the diaphragm contracts and lowers, the lungs fill with air, and as the diaphragm relaxes, this air is expelled. Another thing to note is that inspiration is an active process, requiring the contraction of various respiratory muscles and therefore the expenditure of significant amounts of energy. On the other hand, expiration may be passive, as in quiet breathing, which may not require much energy, or active, as in forced breathing. So there's three different types of respiration: external, internal, and cellular respiration. External respiration refers to the gas exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the alveoli of the lung and the capillaries. Total gas exchange at the lungs increases as a result of two factors. Number 1, increase in ventilation, and 2, the increase of blood flow to the lungs. Internal respiration is the exchange of gas where oxygen leaves the blood and dissolves into the surrounding tissues, and then carbon dioxide from the tissues dissolve into the blood. This increases due to 4 factors. Number 1, an increase in the partial pressure of oxygen gradient. Number 2, increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Number 3, a decrease in pH. And 4, an increase in temperature. Cellular respiration is the process in which cells use oxygen to generate energy in the mitochondria of the cells. The respiratory system can be divided into 2 main zones, the conductive zone and then the respiratory zone. The main roles of the conductive zone are temperature regulation and to filter air. It consists of all the structures that convey air from the outside of the body to the lungs. So, these are the mouth, nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary and secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchioles, and terminal bronchioles. The respiratory zone is where gas exchange occurs. So, the bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and the alveolar sacs are the structures of the respiratory zone that are involved with the exchange of gas between inspired air and the blood. Ventilation is the combination of inspiration and expiration. More specifically, it is the volume of air moved by the lungs in 1 minute. Ventilation is influenced by 2 factors, the first being the volume of air in each breath, and the second being the number of breaths per minute. There are 3 phases of ventilation. Phase 1 is the rapid phase where ventilation immediately increases. Phase 2 is the slower exponential increase. And phase 3 is the leveling off of ventilation at a new steady state. The average person's lungs have about 300 million alveolar sacs, which are surrounded by webs of capillaries. The walls of each capillary are 1 cell thick, which provides a very short distance for gas to diffuse. So diffusion occurs at the lungs as the blood becomes oxygenated and CO2 is removed. This also occurs at the tissue level as oxygen is delivered for metabolism and CO2 is removed again. Diffusion is defined as a movement of gas, liquid, or solid from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Diffusion can only occur if a difference in concentration exists, and such a difference is called the concentration gradient. As you can see, once the food coloring was added, it became concentrated with the color in a certain area. This difference is the concentration gradient. Eventually, the color diffuses throughout and reaches equilibrium. So O2 transport is the process in which oxygen is absorbed in the lungs and then carried to the peripheral tissue. Only 2% of oxygen is dissolved in the plasma, so the other 98% is transported by binding to hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is this protein in the red blood cell that allows oxygen to be carried throughout the body. So oxygen combines chemically with this hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. CO2 transport is the process in which carbon dioxide is moved in the blood into the alveoli and then exhaled from the body. There's 3 ways in which carbon dioxide is carried within the blood. So number 1, being dissolved in the plasma, 2, binding with the hemoglobin, and 3, transported by the bicarbonate system. Oxygen deficit is a difference between the oxygen required to perform a task and the oxygen actually consumed prior to reaching a new steady state. It is the amount of oxygen that is taken during stressful exercise minus the amount of oxygen that would otherwise have been required for the steady state aerobic activity. The trained individual will reach this steady state plateau faster than the untrained individual. OBLA stands for onset blood lactate accumulation, and it is the point during exercise at which lactic acid builds up in your blood and fatigue starts to set in. VO2 max is the maximum volume of oxygen in milliliters that the human body can use in 1 minute per kilogram of body weight while breathing at sea level. So a non-athlete aged 30 to 39 would typically have a VO2 max of about 40 to 50 milliliters, while someone like Lance Armstrong has a VO2 max of 85 milliliters. There are different limiting factors in your VO2 max. In the respiratory system, these factors are inadequate ventilation and then oxygen diffusion limitation. And then in the cardiovascular system, these factors are inadequate blood flow and inadequate oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. After learning all this new information, I hope you'll now be able to breathe easy.